Great to be here in South
Oh,
Africa.
it's lovely to have you, Chris.
It's always nice to get together. You've been doing resilience research for many decades and really a pioneer in the field, and certainly the resilience expert in the Global South. Tell me, having lived this journey, what do you find really exciting about resilience research?
It's a great question, and I think that you've been doing resilience research for just about as long, and you could probably answer that question too. But probably, if I have to choose from the many things that are really inspiring currently in the resilience field, I would say we finally got to the point where we no longer believe the myth that resilience is about being this rugged, superhuman individual. You'll know the early studies of resilience, grit, and the early studies of resilience had this idea that resilience was all about personal capacity. And
Help
that
yourselves.
and that personal strengths were all that you really needed to be okay and do okay when life is really, really hard. Since then, luckily, there is this inspiring series of studies that have probably been published in, since 2016, I would say, that has drawn our attention to the fact that resilience is the capacity to do okay and be okay that is rooted in multiple resources across multiple systems. So pretty much what that means is that resilience is in our bodies, it's in our minds and hearts, so in our psyche, it's in our relationships, it's in our institutions and what they provide, it's in our environments, both the built environment and the natural environment. And so it's this understanding that we need to better understand what the combination of resources is and how that combination co-enables. It's this co-action, this network. And that's exciting because it takes, I think why it's exciting is it takes the responsibility off the individual to be resilient.
Right, and what that does too is take that shame, blame, guilt, heavy burden to the side and opens up the word options. So that the thinking is thinking about flexibility and options and realistic expectations. So if something bad happens, it makes sense for you to go back a bit, and everybody's individual, and it may take some people more time or less time, but resilience is a skill and a process, and it interacts within systems.
And I think an additional benefit of understanding resilience as a multi-systemic capacity is that it means we can now help families, communities, service providers, governments to better understand how they can partner with young people to enable their resilience. If they know that resilience is not just about an intervention that grows psychological skills, right? But also about providing the resources and the facilities needed to keep your body healthy. And about providing the kind of housing that doesn't expose young people to extreme temperatures or to toxic air quality, but giving them green spaces, nurturing parents, encouraging teachers. Then we as a collective can say resilience is our business. We do this together by making these various resources available and accessible.
And we can pull from different types of research that maybe is not categorized as resilience, but it helps to make that point. So they've done research where you're doing problem solving, and either you have a concrete screen or you have a screen of the natural world, and the problem solving goes faster and is more accurate when you have your screen of the natural world. And so that's an experimental manipulation, but it helps us to take that piece and say, well, we do know that going into the natural world is a great resilience strategy. And we can then take understandings from, say, indigenous populations where they feel they are in relationship, they have relationality with land, with grass, with trees, with plants, because they see that as, they're all equivalent in being from the Creator, and the earth is the source, not just a resource.
Right.
So you get these different bodies of knowledge, and they come together and make this package that just makes so much sense for resilience.
Yeah, your work has been really good at bringing in the Indigenous perspective. And I think what it teaches us, what I've appreciated, is that those resources across system levels should fit the situational context and the cultural context of the young people that people are seeking to enable.
Yeah, for sure. And we recognize in resilience, I think, if we just take young people, but they're living in multiple worlds. They're living in their lived environment, they're living in a school climate, they're living in an online climate, and now the challenges in many ways because of these different worlds is higher for them. And I think one of the great things about resilience research is that it does seek to elevate the lived experience voice. It seeks to elevate the youth voice, how youth understand their resilience process. And that's part and parcel of their own positive development and youth empowerment, which I think is so important.
I agree. The lived experience, or the idea that the people, in my case, the young people who are in our resilience studies are these lived experience experts, is really important. But the way forward is to continue to embrace that and add objective measurement. So I think the future of resilience research is really going to require very sophisticated studies that have a team of multidisciplinary researchers working together over time to investigate the resources at the biological or the bodily level, the psychological, the social, the institutional, and the environmental, in ways that don't just capture the youth voices, but also get objective measurement, and these need to be concurrent. So I know I'm saying that this requires lots of funding, and fortunately there are funders out there. We've recently been funded to do just such a study over 5 years.
Congratulations.
Well, no, we were lucky and grateful. But I think that if we want to move the theory of multi-systemic resilience, we need to continue to embrace youth voices and add multiple objective measurements at multiple systemic levels, and then bring in, and this is your key contribution, bring in the virtual world.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's really just recognizing that human systems are complex, interacting, like our body as a system is complex, interacting with the environment complex. And so these are complex issues that need, significant investment to try to harness, where can you put value for your dollar in terms of policy spending dollars. And as you're aware, one of the efforts I've gone into is in terms of digital health. How can we make a resilience mobile app so that is something in the youth's hand, ready when they need to use it? It's there for them if they're, in the middle of the night, they can't get to sleep. We have features that are evidence-based that help with stress management, expressing your emotions, using games for cognitive organization and distraction, using art for expression and relaxation, a sleep aid. These are things we know help with resilience, and to put it all in the same app gives a whole toolkit right in their hand. And our Joy Pop app is something that we hope to be able to recognize that different cultures and contexts might need some tweaking in there, and that's an exciting kind of new venture to get into.
So what I'd like to see is a future study that takes what we are beginning to understand, the biological, the psychological, the social, the institutional, the environmental, and the digital resources, and puts them into a cocktail. My students like to talk about a cocktail of resources. Combination is perhaps the safer word. And we find how we can roll out that combination to more young people so that we have the digital and the real working together.
Yeah, and
to make a difference to the lives of young people.
And what's important to youth is to be able to personalize so that they can trial and error learning, try things out, and then personalize their resilience routine that they can have on a daily basis.
So I've continuously referred to young people or children and youth when I talk about resilience, and that reflects the work that I have done and am doing. But I think we probably need to acknowledge that resilience must be studied in the context of risk. And so most resilience studies would be inclined to work with children or adolescents or emerging adults who are exposed to various types of risk because those are considered developmentally challenging times. And then many other resilience studies work with people who are advanced in age because older age is also considered to be a challenging developmental period or a challenging period in life, and one that more and more people are going through because we have so many aging populations. But I imagine that there are adults too who are at risk. Do you know of any of those studies, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we really tend to use the word resilience in reference to some adversity, so some risk. But I think another way that maybe the field will look at resilience is in terms of transition times. Because you're always going there, that's the period where you have to shift. And while you may not have risks in pregnancy, but shifting to being a parent is a transition time. Transitioning into a new school or to moving away to college, that's a transition time. Yes, there are risks. We know most sexual assaults occur in the first semester of college. There's risk for substance use, etc. But that is a transition time. And as you move from, the energy of an early career into mid-career, and then a transition time to slow it down towards maybe ending career or switching careers, these, thinking of transition times is as relevant for resilience across the lifespan.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And transitioning could also be transitioning into relationships, transitioning out of relationships, transitioning out of a period of being healthy into a period of managing a chronic illness. So certainly there is scope for resilience across the lifespan, provided there is a risk or a stressor that can be identified.
Yeah, and thinking of resilience as a skill, it's one of those skills where there's no ceiling. You can't ever get too resilient.
Well, Michael Unger would disagree with you. So he's brought out a new book this year, 2024, Can You Be Too Resilient? And it argues
genuinely resilient, not pseudo-resilient.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, and maybe that's also another avenue for future resilience research is when, if at all, can one be too resilient, and might the too resilient be in instances where you are kind of going back to only looking at resilience as a personal skill, rather than understanding that resilience is this combination, this network of personal, social, institutional, and environmental supports that work together.
Yeah, and I think Indigenous people would bring it back to the collective, and they come up with a word called survivance, where it's survival plus resistance equals resilience. And so there's just many different ways of looking at it.
Absolutely. We've got work to do for a very long time still.